This is Andi Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Pursue Fitness Sportswear, and I'm joined by promoter Eddie Hearn up here in Newcastle. Eddie looking very tanned as always. How you keeping?
Well, this is Britain tan. I was in Mexico, but there was no sun, so I had a little afternoon yesterday in the garden. It was very nice. Now early start, Newcastle, Lomachenko Campbell as well. So busy times, but good to be up here. Always good to be in Newcastle, especially with a card like this. We had pre-sale yesterday. It was the biggest pre-sale we've done in Newcastle. Tickets are flying. Atmosphere last time for Ritz and Patera was off the chain, and that was against a guy who no one really knew. Now you've got a genuine domestic rivalry between a Geordie and a Scouser. It's going to be double lively.
We are obviously pressed for time, so we will go through very quickly. We'll start off with this card though. Davis Jr. versus Ritson. Just talk to me about that fight and the decision behind Robbie Davis vacating his European title to take on Lewis.
Well, that was because he was due to fight Sandor Martin, which I just didn't think was a fight that anyone's particularly interested in. I wanted to push this fight. Once a deal was in place, they had this fight. They wanted this fight. There's talk about was it going to be in Liverpool, who was offered what, and the facts were Robbie Davis Jr. wasn't ready for a championship fight at 10 stone in Liverpool on August the 2nd. I don't think he was even asked about that because we spoke to his manager and it was impossible anyway. So he's shown his mettle and his steel by fighting Lewis Ritson in his backyard in Newcastle. This fight's going to be a World Championship eliminator. It's a massive fight for both guys, and I think they're both taking a fight on the chance to really go and propel themselves to the next level. And it's going to be really interesting to see who comes out on top.
People have labelled this as the boxer versus the puncher. Is that the way that you see the fight, Eddie?
I think if you look at the two, yeah, possibly. I mean, Ritson's a big puncher, but he can box as well. He's got a great jab. Robbie Davis is technically very good. He can punch a little bit as well. I think it's going to be a brutal fight because I don't think, Cam Ritson stopped Davis early at 140. He's a big guy, Robbie Davis Jr. Does Davis carry enough power to stop Ritson early? So I think it's going to go on. I think it's going to be gruelling. And again, I think it's going to be needle. Both guys are going to leave here today really thinking about, who they're going to fight in the future for World Championship fights. But they're most importantly going to be working hard to make sure they batter the other one because they want to do it. That's what they want to do, and that's when you've got a big show.
Obviously, the other main fight on the card is the Ted Cheeseman versus Scott Fitzgerald fight. For Ted, he's still looking for a win on the back of that Sergio Garcia defeat, and I've seen a few people suggest that maybe will Scott be able to motivate himself the way that he did against Anthony Fowler. What are your thoughts though with regards to that fight?
Yeah, I think Scott, well, he's self-professed madman nickname in that Fowler fight, just completely went, full loon in that fight and just sort of went on an obsessive one, and it worked for him. He come through fire, he put Fowler down, he won the fight. Seems a bit more calmer now, and I think that's probably good for him. Cheeseman should have really beaten Kieran Conway. I thought he nicked that fight, but Conway did really well in that fight. But has got great championship experience. Coming off the Darren Byfield victory, the Sergio Garcia defeat, and the Kieran Conway draw, 3 solid 12 rounds there. He is young, and he is learning. But you've got to move your head, especially against a puncher like Fitzgerald. So if he doesn't move his head, it's a very dangerous fight. If he does move his head and he can take Fitzgerald into deep waters that he's never been in before, it's going to start to get really interesting. And I think 2 potential domestic fights of the year on this card. Loads more are being added to the card as well, but those 2 are really standout domestic fights, and I think they're both complete 50-50s.
Dave Allen also up here, he's been added to the card. Was you surprised with the sense that he's decided to come back, or did you always know that he would on the back of that David Price defeat?
I just said to him, if you're fit, if you're healthy, if you're happy, then I'll let you box. He's not going to be in a fight that should be too taxing for him on here. I want to see him get a win. But one thing that's impressed me, and one of the reasons I'm giving him the fight, is he stayed in the gym. Do you know what I mean? So he's not gone off and just sulked and eating rubbish and put on loads of weight. He stayed in the gym, he stayed healthy, mentally he's there, physically he's there. So let's see him get a win. Every fighter that we've got wants to box in Newcastle because they've seen it on TV, they've seen the atmosphere. So he boxed here before, they love him up here, so I'm going to give him a chance.
Now we'll have to move very quickly on from this card, and we'll move on to this past weekend. Anthony Yarde was unsuccessful in his first world title challenge against Sergey Kovalev. What was your thoughts on the fight, Eddie?
Thought he done really well. I mean, I don't like people so negative. It's almost like, ha ha ha, you lot. It's like, come on, guys. And I think Tunde's sort of been the reason that everyone's so negative towards Yarde and to Tunde. But we should be positive towards both of them because they went out there, with no experience at all, and I know they got a fortune, but they weren't that far away from pulling off a defeat. I mean, he didn't win many rounds, but in that 8th round, it was there. Do you know what I mean? The matchmaking for Yarde has been so poor over the years that it's not enabled him to be ready for the circumstances that come with that fight, right? But what he showed was rawness, toughness, ability. All he lacked was experience. Like if they would have taken Jose Burton, if they would have taken Callum Johnson or Buglioni or those kind of fights, they would have been prepared for that, and they probably would have won the fight in that 8th round or 9th round. And the finish reminded me a little bit like Michael Watson against Nigel Benn. It was like a bit of a stiff jab, just exhaustion. I hope physically it hasn't taken too much out of him. But he was thrown in to the Lion's Den, thrown in Russia. Do you know what I mean? And he's still done well. So give him the respect that he deserves. He should come out now, be on a lot of money. You know, he's got a good name. His stock's risen. They've got to make changes. You know, and surely they don't. I think the thing about them not sparring has to be a wind-up, because it can't not be. I mean, it's ridiculous. But there's got to be changes in the corner. Like, you can't, in a time where you need strategy and advice more than anything, you don't start screaming lines in the camp and like motivational stuff. You've got to tell him how to beat him, what to do. But for all Tunde's negatives, he's still got him there. From nothing, from no amateur pedigree, he still got him there, and if they would have won, blimey, he would have looked like a genius. So, you know, I think everybody deserves credit, but everybody can change and improve, that's all.
Now, I saw a few suggestions over social media and questions put to yourself as to how Josh Buatsi would have got on with Sergey if he was in the ring. How do you think Josh Buatsi would have done?
I think Joshua Buatsi would have beaten both men, but he's in exactly the same position. His opponents are very similar to Yarde's opponents before he boxed Kovalev. You've got to take that next level to prepare yourself. Once you go in with Kovalev, Bivol, Beterbiev, mate, there's no turning back. Do you realise the level? Although Kovalev's nowhere near the fighter that he was, do you realise those levels compared to where Yarde's been boxing? Like, it's not even like remotely comparable. Same with Joshua Buatsi. So whilst I believe he could beat both of them, I mean, I would make the Yarde fight now. But whilst I believe he could beat Kovalev, you don't put one of your top stars, a diamond, in that situation until they are 100% ready. Not for $1 million, not for nothing. Because you're wasting it and you're taking chinks out of an armour and you're damaging a fighter that could go on and be a complete world beater and a huge undisputed star. That's what I believe Buatsi is. So we've got to manage his career correctly. After Ryan Ford, that will hopefully give him rounds, he needs a Blake Caparello or a Charles Foster or who's the guy who boxes everybody? Not tough kid. Just lost to Jesse Hart. Sullivan Barrera. Yeah. You know, these kind of guys who can give you those rounds, can fight you back to prepare you for that. And once he has those, Joshua Buatsi, in my opinion, will beat everybody. But we've got to see it first. Start with Ryan Ford on Saturday.
Do you think we will see Josh versus Anthony Yarde at some point?
Big pay-per-view fight. Big pay-per-view fight. I'd make that fight now, but it could be a monster. So we'll see.
And then just to stick with the light heavyweight division, just wanted to get your thoughts on Beterbiev versus Vosdik as a unification fight. How do you see that one playing out?
Really good fight. I think Vosdik will win that fight, but I look forward to watching it.
Obviously, I know you were just out in Mexico for the Estrada fight. Firstly, how did you assess his performance?
It was really good. He hurt his hand in the third round. Beeman was great. Thought the atmosphere was incredible. We broke the attendance record in Sonora, Hermosillo. He'll fight Yafai next in a unification fight. Great fight. I think Yafai will see chinks in him, but you know, Estrada is pound for pound one of the top fighters. But this is Cal's moment. You know, he's had those defences, those mandatory defences. Now it's the big one, big money, rolling the dice, everything on the line. But he's ready for that, and you know, don't count him out in that fight.
Is that 100% going to happen next?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to touch on the rumours as well this morning that Callum Smith had become a bit unhappy with regards to the way that his career was going, and he'd received a few offers from America. What's your thoughts on it all?
I think it's a Joe Gallagher favourite, you know, it's Joe Gallagher special. We had a meeting in Mexico with Joe and Callum. I think he feels like he's not the star that he should be in the position that he's in. And the main reason for that is because of the World Boxing Super Series. it gave him the belt, the money, but it didn't give him the profile that he should have had in those fights. So it's a bit frustrating in that sense. And whilst he can make more money than anywhere else fighting the fighters on DAZN, we've actually got to deliver those fights. Do you know what I mean? If Canelo won't fight him, if Triple G won't fight him, if Saunders won't fight him, or Billy Joe won't fight him, or Janny Jacobs, so we've got to make those fights. One of the reasons we signed Billy Joe was to fight Callum Smith. That fight's there for next spring, if you want it. We're now working with Golovkin. That fight's potentially there as well. So I think the frustration on their behalf is, where are these big fights? And we've got to deliver them for them. And I think Joe's sort of put me on notice with Sky to say, there's other offers out there. We want to see what you're going to deliver. So I've got to see if we can deliver that, and if we can pay the money they might want to be in those kind of fights. And that's, we have got to deliver those fights to Callum Smith because he's ready for them. So we'll see. When
you consider all those names that you've just mentioned, why is it that as of yet those fights haven't materialised for Callum?
I think that they think Callum Smith is a beast, quite honestly. And I'm sort of saying to them, I believe he is as well, but I'm sort of saying to him, he ain't beat no one. Oh, he beat a faded George Groves. I'm trying to sort of put in the cell. Oh, he's massive. They look at this guy, 6'5", super middleweight, and think, fuck that, leave him alone. But Billy Joe will fight him. So Callum will be offered that Billy Joe fight for the spring, and hopefully we can make that happen. But I do want both of those. I'd rather those other guys, Billy Joe and Callum, to fight Golovkin, Canelo, and then meet in an absolute million-buy Wembley Stadium fight. But it's still a huge fight next year. But I just think it could be slightly bigger.
Now, in the meantime, who will Callum be stepping in with? I know you mentioned Liverpool card in September.
He'll be fighting in October, something like that, and we'll announce that soon. Needs a good, solid opponent, really. I'm just booking an Uber while we're talking. Needs a good, solid opponent because in 2020 he's getting slung into the mega fights. But I think what they want to see is who are those fights and when are they going to happen.
Eddie Hearn catching Ubers, never thought I would have saw the day. But last final question before I do let you shoot. Andi Ruiz has finally come out and officially confirmed the rematch with AJ will take place in Saudi Arabia. I remember when I spoke to you before and you said there were just a few issues Andy had with the contracts. What were those issues with regards to him not being happy? Well, it was mainly people in his ear telling him he should be on more money. But there were also some genuine issues like security, like commission, like drug testing, stuff like that, flights, hotels. There was some stuff that he had to do commercially outside of the original contract that he signed within this deal, which he was compensated extra for, which helped a lot. Yeah. And there was stuff that he was answered, we answered to make sure that he was happy with all of his questions. Once that was done, is it Central Station we go to? Yeah. Right. Once that was done, he was happy and we got it done. And it was a bit of a frustrating period because, people were sort of saying, oh, is he fighting? We knew he was fighting. We had a contract that we were ready to, enforce. But once it was all solved, we stepped back and we said, okay, no reason to do that. And then we go forward and get ready for a monster fight. This is going to be one of the biggest fights in heavyweight history. People laugh at me. This is a Thriller in Manila, Rumble in the Jungle, all over again. The whole world is going to stop and watch this fight on the banks of the sand dunes in Saudi Arabia. Press conferences next week, Saudi, New York, London. Mega. Absolutely fucking mega. Well, yeah, and I'll let you run off and catch up Uber now. So thanks for being boxing.
See you Wednesday, yeah?
Well, right.